Africa, Afrobarometer, and others. And with a new generation of CSO leaders emerging, the thought was, how do we capture the journey that the founding leaders took to build and sustain Africa's performing non-state institutions? Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, you may be aware that one of the criticisms of the civil society sector was that founding fathers were mimicking anti-democratic tendencies of African political leaders and overstaying their welcome. In a way, they were becoming Mugabes of Africa. And as such, if we had seen good practices, it was important to celebrate them, but also to draw good lessons for the next generation. It's also important to note that the story of Africa's democracy building journey is dominated by the progress and challenges of building state institutions, particularly the institutions of checks and balances. We have in many ways neglected the building of non-state institutions, particularly democracy, good governance, think tanks, and institutions that serve as a watchdog of the democratic system and promote its sustenance. So in all of these deliberations, we agreed that the best way to capture this essence was through a documentary. And that's why we are here today. So we started in 2021, December, and it's taking us this long to get this documentary together. So there could be not, this time is the best time to outdoor or to premiere this documentary, given the challenges that we are having with democracy recession across the globe. But it's also befitting that we are premiering the documentary on the sidelines of a conference of democracy resilience that starts tomorrow. Now, this documentary delivers on our objectives of telling the how story. That's how to build and sustain successful CSO institutions, but it's also a story of democracy resilience. We didn't start it that way, but we ended up with it. I'm very proud of what we have achieved together as partners, and I must say this is my first debut as executive producer. When when I was told that I was going to be the executive producer, I became slowly headed because it sounded like a big title, only to find out that you decide how the money is going to be spent. So really didn't add any technical input to the documentary. So let me thank CDD, Afrobarometer, OSF for their vision. Also the technical team, Kobiedu, Barbara Van Ryn, researchers Anakwa Dramina, Richard Ajaho, and all those who played a part in producing the documentary as interviewers and so on. And lastly, for Professor Juma Buedi for making the time for us over the many years to get this together. So I look forward to an enjoyable evening. Thank you and welcome again.
So it's time for us to watch the documentary to see Prof's legacy, what Prof has been doing for Ghana and Africa over the past 30 years. So the documentary team will screen documentary, and after they will take some questions on how the team came together to put together this documentary. Thank you.
is its 8th election since the return of multi-party democracy in 1992. Ghana is often described as a beacon of functioning democracy in West
because
Africa.
Because there was a real faith in the Electoral Commission and the Supreme Court.
Ghana has been a bastion of Western-style democracy in the African continent.
It's had free and fair elections since the end of military rule in 1992.
It's a sign that they've really consolidated their democracy in a region known for political turbulence.
The Center has embarked on a pre-election service. The winner-take-all approach to politics, the politicization of the public service.
Is it appropriate for the president to appoint a Council of State member to a state agency board?
As for the president's credibility in terms of anti-corruption, I'm afraid to say it's in tatters.
Of the various actors shaping the consolidation of Ghana's democracy, one name stands out: Professor Emmanuel Jimabweni, or just Prof.
I was somebody who didn't like military rulers, who didn't like dictators, who hated oppression.
That assumed economic management of Ghana from 1966 to 1969 did not, for whatever reasons, deviate much from the strategies they inherited.
And that's what made me and another colleague who formed the Ghana Center for Democratic Development, CDD-Ghana. We're going to save Ghana, we're going to ensure election transparency, we're going to do anti-corruption.
But not just CDD, even at that time. He was almost setting up multiple organizations, if you think about it, that he was setting up CDD, he was setting up the Ghana Integrity Initiative, and even the Ghana Anti-Corruption Coalition around the same time.
But he was definitely optimistic that it would end well. Initially, I wasn't so sure.
I think it's quite an incredible story.
You have to first recognize the background to our work.
Citizens of Ghana and fellow countrymen, good evening. The Ghana Armed Forces took over the reins of government of this country after a successful overthrow of the regime of Kwame Nkrumah. We want to refute any allegation that ACA or God knows what has instigated us to carry out the coup.
The government is a military government.
That the uprising which took place during the early hours of this morning has been quelled.
Flight Lieutenant General.
What the Warlings will hand over.
I happen to lead the biggest opposition party. The economy was in shambles, and the situation was really tense. Rawlings' side had enjoyed incumbency advantage. He had everything, everybody feared him.
They had quite some apprehension, thinking that, oh, the military are going to do all they can to perpetrate Rawlings and his teachings and whatnot. The trajectory of Ghana's democracy was hugely uncertain. Nobody knew. We'd never done this before. We had never moved by ballot box from a government to another. None of this had been done before. There is that, anxiety about what is the post-Rawlings era going to look like. And CDD positioned itself right in the middle of in the heat.
Sometimes I feared for them that some of the deep questions that they were raising about the future of this society could land them into some kind of trouble if the democracy didn't work.
I further solemnly swear that should I at any time break this oath of office, I shall submit myself.
And then we had a new parliament.
We needed to help the new ones to understand the work of Parliament and their own contribution to the work of Parliament.
Everything CD has undertaken has been undertaken with the sole purpose of promoting democracy and good governance.
And also empower citizens to demand accountability, and also leaders also to supply accountability. So both demand and supply side of accountability.
And you can only gain the trust of the people if first they know you are not partisan. You are a neutral entity seeking to bring all powers together.
Their advocacy was powerful.
In this administration, the winner-take-all approach to politics, the politicization of the public service and public service appointments has not just persisted, but appears to have been intensified as well.
If Professor Jimabodi had not been trusted and respected, CDD would have collapsed.
Here was a professor from Legon University, Ghana, University of Ghana, Legon, who was bringing on board a very dispassionate discussion of democracy, democratic governance, and we were trying to put together the building blocks.
In his lectureship, in his engagements with the public and government, exhibited somebody who was above partisanship.
Professor Jimabodi came on TV to speak on an issue. You know, he spoke as a scholar, he spoke as someone who knew what he was talking about.
It's very deep in his thinking and his analysis. He's very courageous when it comes to expressing an opinion he feels strongly about.
Prof was always controversial. I've never known him to shy away from controversy, even in secondary school. I mean, way back. It's always been the guy to talk the tough issues.
And it doesn't matter who it was, whether it's a president or ministers of state or, you know, other civil society. He took people on principle.
That's Jima for you.
I was born in a small village called Abrim in the eastern region, the forest zone of Ghana. I don't remember when I got struck with polio, but my parents tell me sometime around the age where I was going to start walking when I got struck. So all I know is by the time I had consciousness, I had a leg disability, and so my earliest memories will be learning to walk by holding a plank. And I can never say I'm lonely, because if I want company, I know that I have to organize company. Translation meaning I was paralyzed. This is where my debating, argumentation, part of my nickname as Dr. Agama, the opposition leader of the Parliament of the Second Republic of Ghana, this is all part of where it was spawned. I used to protect myself by being sharp-tongued. He was a rebel. The headmaster wrote a letter to my parents. It suggested that I lacked singleness of purpose in the pursuit of my education career.
School authorities want you to do exactly what they want you to do. So I also did not like it. So it drew us closer and closer, and then we were always pushing off school authority. Presumably that helped you to do CDD so that we will fulfill our promise of to rebel oppressors' rule.
And help us to resist oppressors' rule
with all our might forevermore. So I think that was an inspiration.
After that, I went to Legon, and I got to the university at a time when Ghana was under military rule. Now I was a fully developed political animal. I studied political science, ancient history, and philosophy. Years as a student at Legon, there was always some demonstration or strike against the government, against the authorities. So we were in that mode, and I was an avid participant in those because, as I said, I didn't like that military regime at all. I graduated with a good class degree. The university put me on a staff development program, and so I was entitled to a University of Ghana scholarship. And in my case, the exchange program provided some cover. So I left for the US. So I was there altogether for 7 years doing master's and PhD. One of the important things that happened when I was at the University of California was to have met and dated a lady who eventually became my wife, Brooks Robinson. I saw myself as preparing to return to Ghana to teach. So I came back to Ghana in February 1986 to take up an appointment as a lecturer at the University of Ghana. Fortunately, before I left for Ghana, she got accepted into the US Foreign Service and got posted to Ghana.
It was my first assignment as a brand new American diplomat. And I mean, I was very lucky. I got assigned to Ghana. That was remarkable.
Returning to Ghana in the late 90s, advantages that had accrued in the course of my stay in Washington, D.C., where I got exposure to the world of think tanks, the world of grounding policy and action in analysis and data, because I'd been working in think tanks.
Jima is an amazing networker. He knows how to network, and he had all these connections within and without.
Partly because I've been an active scholar in writing and analyzing, publishing on about African politics, Ghanaian politics. When I met my colleague, Dr. Abafu Ajimendua, he knew of me, he had heard about me from his professor, and so it was easy for us to connect and to bond and to eventually work together. Well, the financing aspect, the biggest part was renting premises. And in Ghana, renting premises meant paying 1 or 2 year rent advance. And it was a big chunk of money. And then paying salaries right from the beginning when you have not secured a single grant. And the loan from my wife was very helpful to enable us to be able to take care of some of those things. I brought some chairs and tables from home, plates, cups, all those things. I brought them from home. Me, as co-founder, leader, initial chief, who had no access, could not just go and access CDD funds. We did that by hiring a professional accountant. We also took a decision to make KPMG our external auditor. At that time, that was also unheard of.
Jima was more tied to the research section, supervising the research and other things, and also making some very important contacts that we needed to make. And I was more also on the implementation kind of stuff. I used to joke that Jima has the brain to think and do all the big things, And I have the legs to go around and, you know, get things done.
One of the key things is Professor Jima's ability to build an intergenerational team.
Jima has this facility with people that goes way, way back.
He's a scout, in a good way, like a scout who scouts, you know, food talent.
I was several years his junior, and as I observed while we were in advanced secondary school, he had friends almost in every class.
And he has that in him, where he's able to, has talent and has to be pushed to their, you know, to see their full potential.
He's not intimidated or scared of letting them take on roles.
When we started, it was mainly that. He was able to see and pull in all of the people he thought could be on that ship with him.
We started with a very strong team of individuals who really were very committed.
And that's what it's been. That's what took CDD to become what it is. It took people who had ideas. It took people who were dedicated, people who believed in a cause, in what it is that we set out to do.
It has built its institution on key values of accountability and probity and equality, human rights.
There were instances when CDD would do its research on governance that it became a target for political parties.
Anytime these reports come out, the political party that felt like it's been cornered, just to put it politely, they will contest the research methods you use, your bias in the interpretation. They will find reasons to reject those parts that go against them, and vice versa.
A lot of the time we were seen as, you know, an opposition party because, you know, CDD was trying to do what, you know, opposition parties will usually do in a democracy.
There are a couple of times that we disagreed on some very important subjects publicly in the media.
When Rawlings' party, which had initially refused to cooperate with the CDD, was in opposition after 2000, they used the platforms of CDD to voice us against the government.
But it all shows that CDD has held its place and held itself as an institution that is advancing democracy in Ghana.
They realized that the man was only doing his job.
So I would be ready to argue that some of the choices that we made along the path of our democracy that has held us to sustain ourselves could be credited to some of those processes.
As for the president's credibility in terms of anti-corruption, I'm afraid to say it's in tatters.
He's a fearless anti-corruption campaigner.
And he helped to organize the anti-corruption architecture for Ghana.
Corruption Watch has uncovered that some officials allegedly manipulated a number of contracts awarded as the Environmental Protection Agency in recent years.
He has written articles and papers on very sensitive and important subjects, particularly corruption. His work are like a standard for all other people.
We held a National Integrity Workshop back in 1999, and then eventually led to the founding of the Ghana Integrity Initiative, which is the Transparency International Chapter Ghana.
I became involved in establishing another agency, another institution called the Ghana Anti-Corruption Coalition, GACC.
So you can tell from this that the anti-corruption architecture really was driven by Professor Jima and CDD-Ghana.
Now I have a big announcement for you. CDD have completed their Afrobarometer report. It's going to be released tomorrow morning.
Now, basically, the question we ask is, how many of the following
do you think are involved in corruption?
According also to the survey, 65% of Ghanaians trust the Ghana Armed Forces far more than the president.
The Afro Barometer was set up by CDD to virtually mark the performance of governments. And that was something.
Moving with this agenda of well-executed, scientifically reliable and credible opinion polling, we got enough funding to be able to initiate the first survey in 12 countries in 1999.
You know, when Africa started becoming more and more democratic from the 1990s, the Afrobarometer was formed for that purpose, to make sure that people's voices are part of the process.
The Afrobarometer report was released earlier in Kenya by Professor Emmanuel Jima Boadi, who is the executive director of Afrobarometer, and he joins us live now from the Kenyan capital, Nairobi.
We saw the transition from the Rawlings regime to the Kufuor regime in 2000.
We needed observers like CDD to keep on checking, reporting on us.
Bringing people's voices into the democratic process is one of the key tenets of democracy, because, I mean, democracy is a government that has to be for the people and by the people.
Anytime we release the results, I would hear, those who were in opposition now complaining that, why the results are against us.
What the figures also suggest is that Parliament is even less popular than the presidency.
But to say that the institution itself as a whole is manifestly so corrupt that it can be rated as a third, respectfully.
What do you think fits into that perception?
Afrobarometer in 35 countries or 37 countries now. That's just another incredible story, and it's known for its quality public opinion survey.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am pleased to announce to deploy approximately 8,000 of our members in all 275 constituencies in the 10 regions of Ghana.
Cordio is another creative element of CDD.
And its job is to serve as citizen watchdogs over the election processes.
We have a checklist that is guiding the work that they are doing. But we're able to see exactly what they have been able to observe.
I'm supposed to observe to see whether those people are coming in to check whether their names are in there.
Cordio has perfected the use of parallel vote tabulation, where Cordio establishes a framework for collating the votes that have been counted at selected polling stations, capturing statistically what the presidential election outcome should be.
In our attempt to bring electoral peace, in our attempt to get all parties to accept the outcomes of elections, that has been very critical.
Almost all the things I did that led to the establishment of these other institutions were done, first of all, they were complementary to the work of CDD. Just that each of them had some kind of a focus.
And to actually nurture these organizations over decades and ensure that it is handed over, it transition from one set of founding actors to, now an institution that is running with different actors who have come later on and still has its quality, it's expanding, respected, enjoys all of the, the accolades that, people throw at it. With the networks is established across West Africa, globally. I think it's quite an incredible story.
It was at the first waters that they started to maltreat and beat, and all sorts of maltreatment was meted to us.
What happened at the police headquarters when you were brought down from Shires?
Prof transitioned from military to civilian rule in 1992. He helped drive the National Reconciliation Commission's work.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Haka. You may retire now. Thank you.
And now has played the catalytic role in bringing together and hosting a West African network for that is a huge contribution to democratic development throughout West Africa. So now CDD-Ghana also plays increasingly a regional role. And CDD-Ghana now is a magnet. It's a venue for training, for research, for study, for advocacy.
He's leaving a fantastic legacy for the generations to come. So I respect him a lot. He's the type the state should honor, open our minds, demand accountability, and also to operate as responsible citizens.
CDD continues to push without fear of recrimination, without being intimidated, important conversations about what we ought to do if we want to be a quality democracy in Ghana.
So here you have a situation where the bill says merely because you say you are gay, merely because you hold yourself out as a gay person, that itself is criminal.
We don't call ourselves democratic development for nothing. Center for Democratic Development. What we want is development. We really want the development. We just have made it our business to make sure that it is done democratically.
I think it's the best, one of the best stories of building non-state institutions.
Jima can be happy that the baby that he birthed actually will thrive way beyond his time, my time, way into the future, I think.
So the retirement is on.
Shall we give another round of
Ghana
applause?
has once again proved to the world it is maturing in democracy.
Thank you. So coming on stage, I realized that I've been up here twice and I didn't introduce myself. So sorry. My name is Richard Ajao. I'm a programs assistant at CDD Ghana. And one of the documentary that caught my attention was the naming of CDD as the talent center. And I'm sitting here as evidence of that. I came to CDD after my university for my national service, and I've stayed on. And it's 5 years this October, and I can say that not only have I learned so much from CDD, but Prof and I met in 2022, and Prof has been a mentor and also a close friend. Prof will always call you for lunch, and he will always pose a question to you. He wants to know what's happening on social media. What are young people saying about democracy? What are young people saying about issues that's happening? Prof is very interested in talent, and we are all here one way or the other because of contribution to democracy in Ghana. So we'll zoom right in. We'll zoom right into our documentary team. We have Dr. Hassan, the producer here, and then and we also have Barbara and Kobe online. So Kobe and Barbara will join us online to tell us what went into the making of this documentary, and we'll take 2 questions from the audience for them. So if you can have Kobe and Barbara online. Can Kobe and Barbara hear us?
So, well, as I said, I wasn't, I can't say anything technical. But um, if when I was giving my remarks, I mentioned that the whole purpose for us was, you know, how do we capture what has gone into what we now see, CDD, 27 years, you know, all these institutions. How do we capture that? And we thought, okay, a documentary would do it. But of course, if it was left to me and I was doing this, I would like, okay, yes, let's do something about fundraising here. Let's do something about, you know, but the more creative thought that, no, you needed a story. You needed, and the story must have a hero. So that people can connect to that story emotionally. Otherwise, you know, they lose the lessons from it. And, you know, Prophet Jima was basically the story, but not forgetting what the objective was. And I think in doing that, we accomplished, as I said, two things, because we were not talking about democracy resilience at that time. But as we journeyed with him, you know, from his secondary school days, we kind of understood where all this, you know, this was not manufactured. What we are seeing was built over time. The principles, the insistence on setting foundations was all something that was nurtured, you know, through that journey. So I'm really happy the way it's turned out, because if it was left to me, it would have been something different. But I think that this is a story that, as I said, really gives you the DNA of, you know, what goes into building these kinds of institutions and how they survive over time. And everything that Prof says about nurturing talent, for instance, ability to nurture talent. I think that's, if he was a football coach or scout or whatever, he would be making millions. Because I can count thousands. I mean, I'm really, you know, it might be that he's, you know, affected 100, but just what he has produced over the years is amazing. And he has time for everybody. I don't know how he does it. And all of us have benefited from lunches and, you know, the OSF colleagues there, that it's a story that we should tell more. Because the only way democracy is going to survive is building non-state institutions to complement all the work that we are trying to do with state institutions. We need those who are watching, monitoring, holding people accountable. That's really the only way. Even when democracy is failing, these are the institutions that would fight back. Right? So we need more of those institutions in Africa to deal with democracy recession. But I'm sure that the panel will deal with that. I don't want to go. So I don't know if we are now ready. Barbara and Edu. So I should keep talking. I ran out of my just when you're okay. Yes, maybe yes, maybe I'll take some questions. Nice idea, Vera. Thank you very much. Yes, Rama, you want to also contribute? Okay. Okay. So we'll bring the panel on, because also, you know, when you go to a premiere, it's not supposed to be too long. You know, you want people to interact. There's so there's alcohol. So you don't want people to. You want them to enjoy themselves. So I would now introduce or maybe introduce our moderator for the panel session, Professor Audrey Gajepo, our board chair. And also somebody who intimately knows Prof, has been part of the journey. So she's going to ask some probing questions, I believe, and get this engagement, this discussion going. So, Prof, maybe just a minute as they set up your chair. And then Prof will be joined by Professor Larry Diamond. Is he online now? Okay. And then also Dr. Joseph Asunka, the CEO. Oh, he's not. All right. I should hold it. Yes. Okay. Prof, so I believe you know who is joining you, so I'll leave that to you. Thank you.
Joseph too. Yeah. Am I alone? No. Techua. Is he here? Okay. Do? I believe is here. Could you join us? Great. And we have two other panel members online. Let me first of all say a good evening to everybody, and I'll stand on Kojo Asante's protocols. And we don't want to take up too much time, so we're just going to go straight. I'll start by introducing our panelists, and then I will start the ball rolling with the questions. We have online Professor Larry Diamond. He is a great friend of CDD-Ghana and Afrobarometer. He's a leading political sociologist and an internationally recognized expert on democracy. He holds senior fellowships at Stanford's Hoover Institution and the Freeman Spogli Institute. He is also founding co-editor of the Journal of Democracy. Larry, can you hear us? Hi, Larry.
Good evening.
Technicians, can you help us? I beg your pardon? Perhaps you should tell me what. Hi, Larry. Okay, let me try the other person who is supposed to be joining us online. Dr. Matthias Hunkwe. Dr. Matthias Hunkwe, he has served as the IFES country representative in Gabon since November 2024, following his tenure in the same role in Mali from 2022 to 2024. He previously led Osiwa's political governance and democratic consolidation program for 8 years. Dr. Hunkwe, can you hear us? Okay, I'll just go on. I know that the next two people I'm going to introduce can certainly hear us. Okay, so we have sitting on my left Professor Abdul Karim Seidu. Professor Abdul Karim Seidu is an associate professor of political science and lecturer at Thomas Sankara University in Burkina Faso. Since 2022, he's been the scientific director of the master's degree in political science and head of the political sociology and public action team within the Laboratory of Law and Political Science. Welcome to the panel. And we have also seated on my right, Professor Techua Menu, who is an emerita professor of African Studies at the University of Ghana, known for her work on gender, migration, and African development. She served as director of the Institute of African Studies from 2002 to 2009 and worked at the UN Economic Commission for West Africa thereafter. Professor Techua Menu, welcome to the panel. And, I can see Professor Larry Diamond. Professor Diamond, can you hear us? I think you can hear us. We can't hear you, but I'm sure they'll fix it. Technology does that, doesn't it? Professor Hunkwe, can you hear us?
I can hear you, yes.
You're muted.
No, I am not muted. It's showing that my audio is working.
I think we're beginning to hear Larry Diamond. Yeah. I think I'm going to start. I'll ask the first question and hope that we can get them to answer after those who we have in the room have answered the question. Is that okay? Okay. So let me start with you. You know, the 1990s marked a new beginning of sorts for Africa. We thought we had left the days of the coup d'etats that were featured in, some of which was featured in the documentary we saw. After many years of that instability, though, how would you assess democracy, the progress of democracy on the continent?
Thank you. I would like to thank you for the invitation on the behalf of Professor Augustin Luada, who was supposed to be in the panel, but couldn't make it. So thank you for the invitation. But before I come back to your question, I would like to ask a question to Dr. Kojo. When are you releasing the French version of the documentary? Because I live in Accra in 2 days, I will not leave Accra before I got it because we need to disseminate it in Francophone Africa. So thank you. Yeah, I think to come back to your question, if you look at what is happening at the international level, especially the recession of democracy at the global level, in West Africa in particular, we can see two situations. We have countries like Senegal, Ghana, when we can see democratic consolidation. But we have countries like Burkina Faso, Niger, Guinea, when we have a new military coup. And I think it can be related to the many factors, including the performance of political leaders, of political parties, in the implementation of democracy, and the weaknesses of check and balance institution, and also the weaknesses we can see at the regional organization like the ECOWAS. But I think if you look at the Afrobarometer data, even in countries like Burkina Faso and Niger, democracy remains the preferred political regime for the people. So what the people would like, even the military regime, to do is to restore security and to restore constitutional order. So I think there is a hope that we can continue to strengthen democratic governance in our region.
Okay, thank you. Obviously, you think that glass is half full rather than half empty, right? Yeah. So I'll go to you, Professor Menu, to give us an assessment. What do you think? Are we making progress when it comes to democracy on the continent if you look back to the 1990s to the present?
Thank you, Audrey, and good evening, everybody. I think I would agree with the assessment that he has made. Globally, we are facing a difficult situation. Democracy seems to be facing challenges in most places. But if we are to look at our sub-region and even our continent, I think that compared to the 1990s, the glass is certainly half full or maybe half empty, right? We have made some progress. It is not to the extent that we may have wished, but certainly we have made progress. And I think that it's important, as he stresses, that if we look at Afrobarometer data, even in the countries under military rule, we really need to distinguish the interest of regimes from the broader interest of peoples. So it is important that in these countries also that the people actually prefer democracy, even if the same data is telling us that there has been some decline in the percentages. But I think that I wouldn't say we are on the right path, but it justifies what has happened since the 1990s, and we can only hope to learn from the problems and the challenges and to strengthen the factors that consolidate democracy and make it resilient in our sub-region.
Thank you. Is there any hope, or should we just move on without? The people online are not yet back online, are they? Okay. All right, great. And I think that the last point you made about Afrobarometer data showing that there was still there was popular support for democracy, but when you compare it over the years, you see that that support is declining. It's a good point at which I like to ask my next question. We've seen coup d'etats since 2020, maybe 7. We certainly have 4 successful ones in the West African sub-region. His country, Burkina Faso, Mali, Guinea, Niger. Some have been unsuccessful. So, you know, shouldn't we be fearing that there's democratic backsliding? To you, and then I'll go to him.
Well, there has been democratic backsliding, particularly in those countries. And it is worrying that in our own countries, there has been some seeming support among not just young people, but even older people for a strong man rule, shall I say. And we have been concerned about the quality of our democracy. So that is the democratic backsliding in terms of the quality of even the democracy that we enjoy. Still, I would not say that the preference has changed, that overall, and the Afrobarometer people are here, I think that democracy is still the preferred form of governance So to that extent, when we use the word backsliding, it's like you've gone back to some bad old ways, right?
Well, 4 coup d'etats means those countries certainly have gone back to the past.
But even in those countries, the extent, in Mali, we have seen the call by political parties not to be proscribed, you know. So in many of those countries, there is an effort by the leaders in power to really constrict the civic space. So it is hard to know what exactly the people in those countries want. But we hear, we have contacts with different people. So if there was a referendum, let's say, in Mali today, I have no hesitation in thinking that the people would say, and I think he made the point, they want security, but they also want democratic rule.
Your country has been a topic of discussion, particularly in social media, and young people seem very enamored with your leader as the kind of exemplary leader that Africa should be having. You have to go back home, I know, but you know. Perhaps you want to start from your country and then expand your answer to whether indeed we should be concerned about democratic backsliding.
Yeah, I think we need to take into account some factors in explaining what is happening in countries like Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. One important factor is that we had for many years not truly democratic regimes, but hybrid regimes. You can remember the Compaoré regime in Burkina Faso, and even after the collapse of the Compaoré regime, we had a transition government, we have a democratic government, but still people continue, practice like corruption. So there are a lot of dissatisfaction about the performance of political parties, political leaders. And second important factor for me is security factor. Because in the beginning of the 90s, we didn't face any this kind of security challenges. So due to security challenges, people can change their mind, their perception, change the perception of democracy. And there is instrumentalization of security to legitimize military governance. So I think it is also very important factors we have in mind. And I would like also to add that there's a lot of actions by people, even in exile, to resist. So I can recall what the review, the journal Politique Africaine wrote in the 80s, what they call politique par le bas, politics by the bottom, how people resist in authoritarian regime when there is no possibility to express your dissent publicly. But there are a lot of, I think it is important to engage research to see to what extent people in Burkina Faso and Mali are resisting in this kind of context. But we can, coming back to President Ibrahim Traoré, I think for many years the figure of Thomas Sankara is very important, like people like Thomas Sankara, Rawlings, because they were the symbol of integrity. And people were very dissatisfied about corrupt practice during democratic regime. So this is one of the explanations of why it is very popular among the young people in Burkina Faso, even in other West African countries.
Yeah, you mentioned security and certainly corruption. And corruption seems still very entrenched in many of our countries. And so I guess my question to you, Techua, is what, aside from security, what are some of the challenges that face us in trying to build resilient democracies on the continent? And how much at risk are we because we don't seem to be able to tackle corruption in our countries?
Thank you very much. I know I'm kind of jumping the gun into the documentary, but precisely the kind of issues that were raised in the documentary that we just watched. How do citizens have voice in a democracy? How do they participate in the governance of their countries? How do we, of course, protect the pests? How do we protect the will of the people? One form of corruption that we don't talk about enough is also the types of political parties that we have and the ways in which people even come to represent the people. So the monetization of politics, you know. So all of those things. And then delivering goods and services to people on the ground. I think that there are some very real issues. Again, if you look at the Afrobarometer reports, people talk about the quality of education, the lack of employment, health services, trust and accountability from leaders. All of these are issues that we need to tackle aside corruption, you know, or in addition to corruption, because sometimes we think of corruption in a very mechanistic way, but do not broaden it, you know, to even the fact that within a school system, some children can get more teaching because they are in a position to pay. And then those children whose parents cannot afford it are also out of it. So I think that in terms of how we ensure that our democracies function to serve the needs of our people instead of the 4-year electoral cycles that we go through, and of course those transitions that we are managing. So we keep changing the parties, but very little change on the ground in the lives of people. Those are important issues, and they can only fester frustration, and there is also the increasing security threat, especially with the departure of our Sahelian neighbors. It also increases the security threat for those of us on the Atlantic coast. So there are several issues that we need to be concerned about, you know, beyond the fact that Ghana and Senegal can transition, can change political power, but very little changes in the lives and fortunes of people on the ground.
And do you want to add to that the challenges to democratic resilience? You mentioned security, of course, you mentioned corruption. You may want to expand on that a little bit more, and you may want to add to that list of.
Yeah, I would like to add the need for us to build a vibrant civil society. I think this is one of the contributions of Professor Jima Boadi, having a genuine civil society. Making advocacy on the base of research is very important, and Afrobarometer has been an instrument for us in Burkina Faso to build this kind of civil society. And I think also, coming back to security, we need to rethink the regional response about security, because how to reconcile democracy and insecurity. Because when you look at what we have as a legal instrument, both at the African Union and the ECOWAS, when there is no possibility to organize election in a country due to insecurity, there is no solution, legal solution. So I think we need to mobilize non-electoral instrument of democracy, because election is not only a mechanism or instrument for selecting leaders in a democracy. When we go back to the ancient political thought, we have, I don't know what you call it in English, tirage au sort. Who can help me with tirage au sort? Tirage au sort or consensus, and we have many mechanism we can use to reconcile security and democracy. Because what's happening now in countries like Mali, in Burkina Faso, when there is no possibility to organize election, there is no legal response for it. Is also an opportunity to rethink to new instruments to consolidate democracy.
Ghana and Senegal. But then we also have the situation of Cote d'Ivoire and Togo, where term limits are abused with impunity. We saw recently in Togo where the constitution has now been changed and there is not even a term limit, there's no limit, or in Cote d'Ivoire where the term was changed and elections are coming and so many other candidates have been barred from standing. So this creates frustration for citizens. They don't even trust the regional bodies, and all of that can also contribute to the confidence, a decline in confidence and trust in both their own national bodies and the regional bodies. So that contributes to that democratic backsliding and the loss of confidence.
Yeah, and since you have the mic, perhaps the next question would be, so what should civil society be doing? I mean, we've seen
Burkina Faso are from the informal sectors. So there's a need for civil society to target all social groups in the society. So this is one of the lessons learned from our experience. And also to how to include local values, traditional values in our governance. Because one of the criticism made by some people is the fact that we are implementing a Western democracy and we need to include, for instance, traditional chiefs. And so I think we need to have a kind of balance between universal principle of democracy and also some local needs, local values to make sure that we can have everybody on board.
Thank you. I understand that we have Professor Larry Diamond on air. Is he still there? Professor Diamond, are you there? How about Dr. Hunkwe? No?
Yes, I'm here. No? I'm here.
Who is here?
Sorry, I'm also here.
Who is here?
We are both here.
Technology. We're sort of getting to the tail end of the conversation. We're sort of getting to the tail. Definitely want to hear your thoughts on the progress, how you'd assess the progress of democracy on the continent, and what you think about concerns about democratic backsliding in West Africa. I'll start with you, Professor Larry Diamond. Professor Larry Diamond. Professor Larry Diamond.
Okay, well, thank you very much. And most of all, congratulations to my dear friend Jima Bwadi. I think the backsliding in West Africa has, I think, been. Sorry, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
I think the backsliding in West Africa has been quite severe, and particularly in the Francophone African countries. But if you're looking only at West Africa, we do have a very significant bright spot in Senegal, where Macky Sall was trying to turn Senegal into yet another competitive authoritarian regime and to stay on beyond term limits, and was frustrated in his ability to do so by remarkable resistance from civil society. And I think I do see some now. We had a breakthrough. I do see some. We had a breakthrough in Botswana, where the ruling party party lost after nearly 6 decades in power. And we've just had a breakthrough again in Mauritius, where after an extended period of democratic backsliding, democratic forces have resurged and turned a rotten and corrupt ruling party out of power. So I think we're seeing some signs that African civil society, African oppositions, in coalition with, other living forces of civil society, the media as a watchdog, and organizations. There's none that are the equal of CDD, I think, in Africa. But there are other such, civil society monitoring and watchdog organizations, and they're the various constituent units of the Afrobarometer. And I'll just conclude by saying I think you should, maybe this point has already been made, we've really not had access to the audio feed from the event, but I think you should not underestimate the impact of the Afrobarometer as a resource for and a form of advocacy for democratic progress and democratic voice in Africa. The fact that we know what people in these individual African countries think, and that democratic forces can utilize that to claim authenticity for their voice, I think is extremely important.
How would you assess the progress of democracy? Same question, and also concerns about democratic backsliding.
That the feed is frozen.
We heard you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think it's Professor Gadipo who's also frozen, it appears. But she just went off, so she may be trying to log back in.
Okay. I think the last set of questions, the last question actually, I'm going to pose to all of you is that we've just watched this great documentary, the documentary, Jima Buedi as a democracy influencer, except I'm not sure he has any brand marketing deals yet, but I think that we should turn our attention to his legacy. And I'd like to start with Larry. You've known Jima for a very long time. We can't hear you.
It appears the internet at the.
Oh, okay, so he's gone? Okay. We'll come back to them then. But perhaps I'll start then with you.
So thank you very much. I've been struggling with this.
I think.
Okay, Larry's back.
I'm gonna get off.
Larry, can you hear us? The connection is really bad. Oh, they've gone. Okay.
So perhaps because I don't belong to the generation of influencers, I've been struggling with this term of democracy influencer. I much prefer to think of Jima as a democracy activist, as an institution builder. I think many of us may have been surprised to see the linkages among the different organizations, CDD, the GII, the Ghana Integrity Initiative, the Ghana Anti-Corruption Coalition, Afrobarometer, Cordeo, Wadimos. And in Ghana, we like to wait until people die before we celebrate them. So I'm very happy that we've celebrated Jima whilst he's still around. I particularly like that the suit he wore that day when he was going to America, the three-piece white outfit, and I am still hoping that we could get him to don it one more time, you know, albeit in a different style or size. But it seems to me that the film, so like his friend said, he was always a rebel, and I don't know about singing the national anthem to justify it, but like his sister told us, he was always a troublemaker, you know. And I like one of the terms I'm going away from here with is good trouble. This is a troublesome man, but he likes to make good trouble. And I think that that is a good concept to go away with. Some people make trouble just to be troublesome. Huh? But this is good trouble. And he's not afraid to say some very bad things, hard things, like somebody looking at your face and not using the equipem, me paucho say, please, I want to tell you respectfully that I don't think you are making sense. No. He's just telling you your reputation is in tatters. And he's saying it to you. He's not mincing any words. So I have enjoyed watching the documentary. Somebody from very humble beginnings. He has not let anything stop him on his way. He has made use of the opportunities that has come his way. He has worked with other people. So he's both an institution builder and a team player, because he couldn't have done all of this by himself. But he manages to draw people to him. He knows how to work with them. The things he cannot do, he finds other people to do. But this is how you build a team. And today, we are all eternally grateful. I wish that President Kufuor had realized that in his term and actually honored him in the way that he should have been honored. Thank you very much, Jim.
Thank you. Thank you. Jima's legacy.
I think Professor Wadi is a source of inspiration for all of us, especially for young people, for young Africans. He's an example of intellectual. Because what is important is not only to have a university degree, but to have commitment for society. I think this is one of the most important legacy of Professor Jima Boadi, who is a Democrat. It is the example that we cannot build a democracy without Democrats. We need people committed to democracy, committed to the dissemination of democratic values in society. So Professor has influenced what we have doing in Burkina Faso, especially through Afrobarometer. Anytime we had challenges in, because we face the same challenges, what I saw in the documentary, when we release the results, politicians, sometimes they contest, they reject, especially during the Compaoré regime. And I think the experience of Professor Boadi helped us to deal with this kind of situations. So I think it is important to disseminate this documentary in all Africa, because it is a source of inspiration for young Africans. So thank you and congratulations for this initiative.
Thank you very much. We still haven't gotten the two other panelists back on, and we may have to wrap up without them. But perhaps, if you don't mind, maybe there's somebody, one or two people in this room who would like to reflect on Jima's legacy. All right. And there's a young man, and there's one old man, one young man. And then we'll wrap it up.
Good evening, all.
this evening, we've been talking about the Jima sample of an old man that Prof. Jima has put into the civil society group. I met Prof. Jima around 2007, 2008, when I was ambassador in Spain. There was a conference, and the Spanish authorities invited me. When I went there, I met a Ghanaian delegation, and Prof. Jima was one of them. So I invited them to my office, and we started talking. And I got to know, first of all, that apparently we attended the same secondary school. And then Prof asked me, Ambassador, you are about to retire. I had retired and it was on few months contract. So I said, what do you want to do after you retire? At that time, I was thinking, I'm a lawyer. I was thinking of going to join my uncle who had a very thriving law firm. And Lesia had hinted that that's the Legon School for International Affairs, that they would like to have me teaching there. But then Prof. Jima said, if you come back and you feel like working with CDD, we are prepared to take you. I came back, I stayed at home for about 1 year, deciding what to do with my life. And then something said, why not go to CDD-Ghana? And as they say, the rest is history. I've been with CDD-Ghana for the past 17 years. The young mentors that he has brought there, they've been part of my life. When I get up in the morning, I go to CDD-Ghana. They are there, sharp, intelligent, hardworking young boys and girls, and And that's what has kept me going for all this time. But just to mention another incident, sometime in 2014, I had a call to become the executive secretary of then President Mahama. I was at home one day, they called me, they said the president said you should come, and this is the story I'm telling you for the first time, to be his executive secretary. I said, oh, I'm retired, I'm enjoying my life, how can I come and work with government? So this is a government work, will come and take your CV. So I went to the office, I went to Jima's office. This is Prof. This is a story that is coming, and I'm not sure what to do. And Prof told me, Ambassador, take it. It's an opportunity to help in the work that you are doing in the civil society space. Maybe you can use your influence to change a few things. Interestingly, up to today, nobody has come back to me to say that we've given you an appointment. The only thing is that some few months ago, I met an influential member of the party then in power, and I was introduced to the person. And he said, oh, Ambassador Chega, we wanted you to become executive secretary to the president. And at that time, I can say that also now, former President Rawlings was an influential member of the party. And he said, oh, initially, Rawlings was in favor of becoming the executive secretary. But then, the following day, 2 days later, somebody went and told him that you are working with Professor Chimaboy.
The troublemaker.
And that killed the whole thing. So it was the fact that I was working happy, Professor Jimabwedi, that I didn't get the post.
There you have it. Thank you, Ambassador Chega. Yes. He's representing the.
I just want to take this opportunity to publicly thank Professor Jimabwedi. I recall in 2017, I was having a conversation with Dr. Salome, who is the Director for Research and Knowledge Management at CDD-Ghana. And I said, I would like to do some work in the space in Ghana, and I'm trying to look for an organization that I can become affiliated with. And then she said, well, try CDD-Ghana. I had the idea of something like a fellowship. So she said, well, reach out to Prof. I did. We exchanged a few emails. In July 2017, I became a non-resident fellow with CDD-Ghana. And then about a year or two later, I became a democracy and development fellow. And so I was recently asked when I got my big break in Ghana Civil Society, and I said, all thanks to Prof for giving me that opportunity. I've learned so much. Someday when I grow old, I want to become like him. The toughest thing I've gone through with Prof is writing a report on democracy in Ghana, and he being the one giving me feedback on it. I think it took about 5 drafts before Prof finally sent me that email to say, accepted and approved. If I tell you what I've gone through, but in the end, I always say that when you work with Prof, he sharpens the way you think, he sharpens the way you write, and he ensures that you get straight to the point with evidence as to why you're making a certain argument. So, Prof, thank you very much.
Thank you. I couldn't agree with you more. I think I fall between you and Ambassador Chega as one of Professor Jimabwedi's mentees. And I think that when we look across the room, we see many, hands up, all his mentees. Kathy, yeah. I think we see many people that you've influenced, and that's a huge part of your legacy. Because part of sustaining institutions is to make sure that you mentor people who can take it to another level after you're gone, even whilst you're still here. And one of the things that I've been most proud of about CDD is how we've been able to transition a new team of leaders who can take the organization forward. I think that when we look at the documentary and we reflect on what people have said about the legacy of Professor Jimabwedi, we will agree that he is indeed a democracy influencer, but I agree also that he is your quintessential example of a scholar activist and an institution builder. So Professor Jimabwedi, here's to you. May people continue to be inspired by what you've done, and I hope that as has been said, I hope that the documentary will be accessible. It will be on YouTube. Executive producer, right? Yeah. So the executive producer promises that the documentary will be on YouTube. We can go back and watch it, and we can spread the word about it being available so other people can watch it. It's a shame.
Edited, and as I mentioned, it was quite an honor to be able to do this. And I had known Prof for a few years before I started. And sorry, did I get something?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Yes, I had known Prof before I started on this project, and the pleasure of it was getting to know him more deeply in the process of researching and looking at his life in terms of from all angles, longitudinally, laterally, with different aspects of things he's been involved in now, before his education. Everything was quite astounding and a pleasure to discover in the process. And actually, one of the most challenging aspects of it was trying to contain all of it, because just as we were wrapping up, that was when the whole anti-LGBT legislation was making its way through Parliament, and of course, there was a coalition that was trying to bring us down to earth. And what do you do? Do you add it or not? How much time do you have? And Prof, being who he is, always busy with all kinds of initiatives, and trying to contain all of it within the scope and the time limitations of the documentary. And it also shows what a legacy is left. And the other challenge actually is quite related, in that trying to find archival footage, especially video, of all the things he's done. And I guess it's life, when you're moving through it, you don't realize all the moments you have to capture. And of course, back then there wasn't so much social media and photos and videos everywhere. So trying to find B-roll, as it's called in the industry, to capture all the different things he's done in his life was also challenging. Thankfully, we were able to get some from different sources. Would have liked to get more, but even then was never enough, considering the breadth and depth of Prof's engagements and accomplishments. And so we did the best we can with what we had, and it has really been an honor to have been part of this. And we hope, moving on, everybody around him will do a better job of documenting his different exploits, so that maybe
Thank you so much.
giving Barbara and I the opportunity to work on this. I appreciate it. Yeah.
All right, thank you so much, Kobe and the documentary team. So now we get to see the man of the hour to give us a few remarks, Professor Emmanuel Jima Boedi.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you, all of you. On issue. It's sort of watching some of this commentary and then hearing the things about me reminds me of an episode in my youth when one of my cousins, who was quite rascal, pulled a scare on the family. Word came that he had in Agnes bedroom. So family mobilized, black attired, black clothes, did everything. There he saw this occasion. I didn't have to pull such a fuss to sense of. But I mean, in terms of say, one of okay. mathematical learning, my I but emotion is because of the young people to even understand the word. And I'm also lucky in having positive results from most of the things that I do. And again, I think having the right people around me, enjoying the work that I do, and getting good outcomes out of it for the most part, I'm really grateful for that because I know many, many people who work much harder than I do, who are more talented than I do, and who don't get as good results as I tend to get. So I'm grateful for that. And then also, I'm a product of good timing. You know, you talk of the late 90s. By the time CDD was established, Afrobarometer was established, the Ghana Integrity Initiative, all of these things, the most difficult time in Ghana was past. Those who had tried to do the kind of work I came to do later on some of them had to suffer imprisonment. They've had to go into exile. Some lost limbs. I lost nothing, and I only.
Hello? Okay, good. Another round of applause for Professor Emmanuel Jimabwedi. So we've come to the end of tonight's premiering of the Democracy Influencer, and we will call on Vera Addo, Programs Officer at CDD-Ghana for the vote. Thanks.
Thank you, Richard. On behalf of CDD Ghana, Afrobarometer, OSF, it's my single honor to extend our heartfelt appreciation to each and every one of you for joining us to celebrate the life, the work, and the legacy of Professor Jimabwedi. Tonight we have all seen the work, and we are witness to the story of not just one man, but a story of conviction, courage, unwavering commitment to democratic ideals and good governance across Africa. From humble beginnings to global influence. Indeed, he's an influencer. For us, young people, for the Gen Zs, he is our democratic influencer. Professor Jimabwedi's journey reminds us of transformative power of vision, integrity, and active citizenship. We extend our deepest gratitude to Professor Jimabwedi for allowing us into your story and for dedicating your life to advancing transparency, accountability, and civil engagement across the continent. To the creative production team, and thank you for capturing this film with such clarity, with such care and impact. Your work will continue to inspire generations to come. Executive Producer Kojo, thank you. To our partners, institutions who have made this possible, your commitment to democracy is deeply appreciated. And finally, to you all, thank you for being here. Those online, we thank you for your attention, your reflections, and also for us to commit to continue on the journey. For us, this is a call, especially to young ones here. May we all be inspired to become democracy influencers in our own right. Choboy. Choboy. Thank you and have a pleasant evening. We'll call. Do you have to have the separate? Okay. So, yes. A final item, then we can have our drinks and cocktail. Okay. Okay. So we have Grace Derry. Her organization is Inclusive Friends from Nigeria. She has a presentation for Professor Jimabwedi. If she's here, Madam, kindly come up and present. Professor Jima, may you do us the honors to receive the presentation.
Thank you very much. The moderator was going to ask, someone who just got to know Prof, if someone who just got to know him would speak. I was actually waiting for that moment. Because for someone like me, I personally just met Prof last year. So it's just been a year and, some few months that I got to meet him in person. But before then, I had read about him. I have seen his work. He's someone that from afar I have dreamt to be like, to walk like. And just watching his documentary tonight, I was just telling my colleague that we haven't done any work yet. And thank you so much for being an inspiration, ensuring that we wake up daily and we want to change the course of what is happening in our countries, change the course of what is happening in Africa. Thank you for setting that path for us to follow. Thank you. And I came bearing gifts. I said I wouldn't come empty-handed. Sometimes when you want to meet elders, you come leaving something and receiving a blessing in return. So I came bearing gifts to you, sir, and to say thank you for the awesome and amazing work you're doing. All the way from Nigeria, we're watching. And from across the globe, we're watching.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
In the pantheon of African visionaries, there stands a titan whose legacy reshapes destiny. You have been an unwavering pillar of democracy, an epitome of integrity, a standard bearer of truth, and a paragon of African voice. Thank you for turning whispers into thunder. May your light guide generations.
There's there's a beautiful article also about the journey of Prof. The annual review of political science, titled "Africa's Unfinished Democratic Journey: My Modest Part." QR code. So, yeah, I guess you can just come and scan and get access to that. Really nicely written. I think, are there any housekeeping? We are good to go. Please, there's still food. I hope there's still cocktail, well, wine, not cocktail. There's still alcohol. Yes, there's still alcohol. So please interact I see a lot of great people here, so please don't leave too quickly. Sorry. There's yes, yes. This I mean this if this is to go. Oh, I mean yes. Lusophone, I would all the versions. Chinese.